rubes. So many rubes. Rubes. Please, no rubes.
Are they rubes? Because I don't cotton to rubes.
Oh, the rubiest. Jerk ass.
It's a covenant cleanup.
Shall we begin?
Everybody, welcome to the State Fair. Welcome to the Great Minnesota Get-Together, ladies and gentlemen. And welcome to Carousel Park, and welcome to 9 to Noon at FM 100.3 KFAN. I'm Paul Allen. That's the producer, Eric Nordquist. And back at the 651 Carpets Plus Studios is a Double B, Brett Blakemore. He's guiding the great ship Love Covenant. And he's guiding us through a 3-hour radio show today from the State Fair, radio show number 5 for us from Carousel Park, and courtesy of TimberTech and TimberTech.com. What's on deck 9 to Noon today includes Mike Florio from ProFootballTalk.com. That's about a half hour from now. In the middle stages of the radio show, we have our annual Great NFC North debate. We've done that for many years. David Senekin, the Sultan of Smug, will represent the Green Bay Packers. Lavelle E. Neal III, columnist Star Tribune from the south side of Chicago. He'll represent the Chicago Bears. Yours truly will represent the Minnesota Vikings. And we have a new shooter this year representing the Motor City Kitties, the Detroit Lions, a dear friend of mine named Jason Hatch, who's the biggest Lions fan that I know. He's going to be at the State Fair today, so he's going to jump on the microphone and represent the rather prohibitive favorites to win the NFC North, the Detroit Lions, who were inches from getting to the Super Bowl last year. So, Mr. Mad Producer, when you unfurl the annual Great NFC North debate, how am I, or how do we, get around these Lions who not only roar, but they bite with that nice roster? And good morning.
Good morning. You know, in some ways it feels like it might be a race to second place.
Right.
But I do want to note that you didn't have Lions representation when they went 0-16. You didn't have Lions representation when they had Stafford to Calvin Johnson all those years.
Yeah.
And they were still losing games and finding ways to flunk out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
They find their way through the playoffs last year, and suddenly we had to turn down 10 people to represent the Lions.
Correct.
So the paper bags are off.
Yeah, they're bandwagon riders.
In all seriousness, a season ticket holder of the Detroit Lions is one of the most battle-tested, weathered, strong people you might ever meet in your life. But it's going to be fun today. It's not going to be a race for second.
Yeah.
Jason's going to do his best to defend his position from the top of the hill, and you guys are going to battle your way up top. It's going to be a blast today. I love doing this every year at the fair.
Yep, it's going to be great. Nordo is going to tease the majority of us, which is cool. Teasing wins in the people meter. And then you will experience a bunch of people talking over each other, trying to establish points. And the Sultan of Smug sitting back, making Jordan Love sound like a cross between Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. And we'll be ready for that.
I think his game-worn Ray Nitschke actually fits now. I don't know if you've seen Cinny recently,
yeah.
but he's found his way back into his old-school Bart Starr game-worn.
Yep, he might even squeeze into the Johnny Blood McNally. Wobble will squeeze into his game-worn Urlacher. Jason, as in Jason Hatch, he likes the Lions so much. I'm at Ford Field last year ready for the Vikings and Lions, and there's my man Jason on the sideline. Somehow got himself some pregame field passes, and he's kibitzing with all these Lions fans. So that's how much he loves the Detroit Lions. And we'll see if he loves the microphone today in the middle stages of the 9 to noon radio show, because we ask if you're coming to the State Fair and you would like to listen to and or take in the great NFC North debate. It's quite the spectacle, and it'll take place in the middle stages of the radio show. We'll start with Wobble, mixing it up about some Minnesota Twins and stuff like that, and then we get into the great NFC North debate in the neighborhood of 1017, and once again, courtesy of TimberTech and TimberTech.com. Also, what's on deck 9 to noon includes one of my very favorites, somebody I've gotten to know quite well over the last 5 years, Bob Motzko, coach of the Golden Gophers hockey team. He's salt of the earth. He's a wonderful, wonderful human being and an excellent, excellent college hockey coach. And he'll be here at 11 o'clock, and we will marathon segment with Mr. Motzko. That'll be at about 11:03 here from the great Minnesota clump together. TimberTech, TimberTech.com. If anybody's interested in a deck, just go to the website, TimberTech.com, see what they have to offer, and hopefully it's for you. Hopefully the 2024 Minnesota Vikings setting that roster at 53 is for all of us, because they've set their 53, practice squad to follow. There were like 1,137 or something. What's up, brother? Players who were cut from other teams. So Tuesdays at facilities all around the country, they established their own, and then the scouts and the personnel people and the coaches all get together until the wee hours looking at players who were cut and pondering who to bring in that you think potentially can help your team on the active roster or on the practice squad. And that leads us to, honestly, something I can't remember seeing with the Minnesota Vikings establishing a final 53. It's the old two running back trick. We got the two running back trick for now with Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler. Now, C.J. Ham, he can run it, but he's a fullback. But we have two running backs. Kene Wanwu was cut, which was mildly surprising to yours truly and several other people. But two running backs currently listed on the roster. They're both good. It's clear Kevin O'Connell likes to throw the ball. I mean, reading between the lines here, our head coach loves to throw the ball. The passing offense is very good, and maybe that plays into the two running back trick. Maybe they're so in love with Darnold, it's like, who needs to run? Why do we need a stable of running backs when I like to throw, and we can throw the ball incredibly well? They love college free agent and edge rusher Gabriel Murphy, who's hurt, so he'll miss the first 4 games. But they kept him and used him on that short-term injured reserve list. So Gabriel Murphy, undrafted, he'll be in the mix eventually. Then there's Taki Taimani. Taki Taimani has made our team. Taki Taimani is undrafted, and he's stuck. He's an undrafted defensive lineman, and credit goes to our dear friend and scribe, Alec Lewis, with The Athletic and TheAthletic.com. For it was in this spot on Monday, YA, young Alec, called the Taki Taimani sticking trick, him being on the team. So that's very good work by that scribe. Also, Levi Drake Rodriguez and Michael Juergens both stuck. They both made the team. All right, the majority of the people here in the Mesh Besher and Spence fan stands are like, Levi Drake Rodriguez, Michael Juergens, who are they? They are a couple of 7th-round picks who made the team. And there's a common thread developing here. The message is, whether you're Ivan Pace Jr. last year or you are Gabriel Murphy, somebody on whom they're going to wait, Taki Taimani, Levi Drake Rodriguez, Michael Juergens, the last can go first with the Minnesota Vikings. And how does that help when moving forward? It helps immensely when you're looking to secure college free agents, because now it's starting to prove itself out. If you're a college free agent and you're looking for a place to play and you think you have a fair chance to make a team, college free agents are more apt to sign here, given Minnesota absolutely gives them chances. And they're not just cherry rarity selections. I mean, these spots are hard to get. Lines are long. These gigs are hard to find, man. But like from Ivan Pace Jr. through all those names that we just mentioned, if you're looking for a chip, chair, and chance for your selected profession and executing your toil as a professional football player, Minnesota definitely is something that players like that will be looking to. Also, defensive lineman Jalen Redmond. All right, my man played in the UFL earlier this year. Spent some time with Carolina, but like Jalen Redmond, all right, he made the squad too, because the theme with the Minnesota Vikings is the last can go first. So therefore, just because A, B, C, D, E, F, and G didn't have any interest in you, we're going to give you a chip, chair, and chance and try to raise you the way we raised Ivan Pace Jr. last year, and he became one of the better pass-covering linebackers in the National Football League. The redone facets of the defensive line are palpable, and it's clear that they're looking for something from their defensive linemen in the Brian Flores defense that they feel they didn't get last year. Now you have stalwart and team captain Harrison Phillips, very good against the run, coming off the best season of his career. Jonathan Bullard is a high-end run stopper, also very good guy in the locker room. Now you get to free agent Jerry Tillery. All right, he made the team. Jerry Tillery, Doc. When he hits you, what got clean? Well, it's your clock. Jerry Tillery is formerly a first-round pick by the Chargers, and it hasn't worked out in first-round pick-like status, unless you look at the Vikings-Raiders game last year. And Tillery, when he played for the Raiders, played with his hair on fire against the Minnesota Vikings. Maybe that played into them signing him. But just remember these names, because they're going to be counted on mightily on the defensive line to rush the quarterback and stop the run. Phillips, Bullard, Jerry Tillery, Levi Drake Rodriguez, I envision him playing. Taki Taimani, don't know about his pass rushing prowess, but he's stalwart against the run. He's very difficult to move. And then you got Jalen Redmond. And into the final preseason game against Philadelphia, Kevin O'Connell told Bursich and I in a production meeting, make sure to keep the eyes open for Levi Drake Rodriguez, Taki Taimani, and Jalen Redmond, because those guys have a chance to make the team. And it turns out all of them made the team. The defense got 26, the offense got 24, and I guess a question that yours truly will ponder off the radio as we approach the regular season opener a week from Sunday against the New York Giants out there is, if they add a running back, then who are they going to cut? Because they would have to cut somebody. I would imagine they'll put one or two on their practice squad. But if they do add one, like, who's going to get cut? You know, when the Vikings had joint practices at Cleveland a couple of weeks ago, a week and change ago, whatever it was, when you have joint practices with other teams, that gives you a high-end look at the opposition. It also gives the opposition a high-end look at you when they go back and look at film. Now, the Browns cut a running back, a veteran named Deontay Foreman, who's played for the Houston Texans. I think he was with Carolina. We played him against the Chicago Bears last year. That's the first name that came to mind for me if they are to add a running back, because they got the who, what, where, when, and why with this cat when they went to the joint practices in Berea, Ohio. Or maybe O'Connell feels so good about the passing game and wants to throw it 80 times a game and believes in Darnold the way he does. It's like, well, why do we need running backs? We want to throw the ball, and we'll throw to Aaron Jones anyway. So from Kene Nwanwu getting cut to there being question marks, at least for yours truly, with who's going to return kicks, and everybody they kept and some players that have been released, that will be the modus operandi of 9 to noon early in the equation. That includes Vikes Bites around the corner. We welcome you to the State Fair. This is 9 to noon at FM 100.3 KFAN.
Find our Mall of America street team all fair long in Carousel Park. Ask them about the Mall of America mystery cards where everyone is a winner. Get yours before they're gone for the summer.
Vikes Bites next, 9 to noon from the clump together. Nordo on lead vocals, and Vikes Bites daily are provided by
Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef. They're a Clearwater, Minnesota-based company. You can buy them online, thousandhillslifetimegrazed.com. Box of meat shows up at your doorstep, or you can buy them at your local Coborn's and Co-ops locations. I want to start here digging into the Final 53 PA as part of Vikes Bites.
Vikes Bites.
Ball feast.
You were mentioning some undrafted names, and there's some things I want to get into, a few surprises that took place as the Vikings cut down their roster yesterday. But I think as far as the secondary is concerned, I didn't see any surprises.
Right.
Yeah, Stephon Gilmore,
Yep.
Jack Griffin, Byron Murphy Jr., Fabian Monroe, Caleb Evans. And you were talking about young talent and
Yeah.
the ability, where being first or being last, you can still be first.
Yeah.
As I'm screwing up your analogy from the first segment.
No, it's like McGlothern.
Or McGlothern.
Or Nudie. His nickname is Nudie, and the hope is if he plays, it's the wide receivers who are undressed.
Well, I mean, and probably they had to give him a nickname because no one can pronounce his name correctly. But Dwight McGlothern,
I can.
an undrafted rookie, is yet another a guy that was last, but now has an opportunity to contribute to this team.
Yeah, nickname Nudie, and hopefully it's the wide receivers who are undressed. Anyway.
I love this kid, though. When I was in Philly, PA, it was the first time I got to see him in person in the preseason. His willingness to tackle, remember, and unfortunately he couldn't get, I forget, was it Tanner McKee that he had in the grasp?
Yes, remember the other day when I'm like, it's a preseason game, but that's like one of the worst officiated games I've ever seen in my life, and I'm not an ever or never kind of guy. That I didn't say that. I didn't mention that example. That was the A-topic example right there. Permitting a quarterback to be held for 6 seconds without calling a sack or stopping the play. It's like old Tanner McKee is like they wanted him dead.
But McGlothern, whether it's that play and they sent him in on that blitz, or you see his willingness to tackle, he's had great open field tackles throughout the preseason, and he doesn't look lost in coverage. I think they absolutely found a gem, but just focused on him in a position group ultimately that kind of lined up the way we saw it coming all along.
Yeah, I'm glad you added that, because when I say the last to go first, that means the perception coming into teams picking up players, either drafting them in the 7th round or picking up college free agents. I mentioned Juergens and Taki Taimani and players like that, but McGlothern needed to be in that mix. Because that was a college free agent who was at Louisiana State University, all right? LSU, the good football squad. And he was there with current Vikings defensive backs coach and defensive passing game coordinator Durante Jones. All right, so Durante was with the Vikings, left the Vikings, became defensive coordinator for the Bayou Bengals, left the Bayou Bengals when KOC, we arrived, and came back here. Well, McGlothern was with Durante and Jay Ward, who's currently on the roster, with LSU. All right, so Durante leaves. Well, so did McGlothern. He went to Arkansas. And then he put enough good things on film at Arkansas to earn a right to be here, but not earn a right to be drafted for whatever the reason. And the last go first analogy is a belief in somebody who, for whatever the reason, had good football skill, but was not drafted. So the convincing of the undrafted who can make teams like McGlothern to come here, that's a sneaky strong point Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and the staff have developed with players like that and Ivan Pace Jr. because you don't make the squad if they don't think you can contribute. And I'm with you on McGlothern, man. I had no idea he could tackle the way he tackled. He's rangy. He's long. Arms go from Maui to Maine. Now, again, he didn't get drafted for a reason. I don't know that reason. But that no longer counts because he outplayed it. And he found a way to make a National Football League team. Those are cool stories.
Vikes Bites!
Vikes Bites.
Last segment talking about the defensive front. What are we going to get out of Jerry Tillery and Taki Taimani, Levi Drake Rodriguez, the energy bug, the spark plug to that defensive front? From a
Good question.
From a depth standpoint, and I'm going to hit you with this actually during the debate. I don't want to give you a heads up on it. We're already in friendly territory, so there's a bit of a home turf advantage. But I'm going to ask you this during the debate as well. But I was initially disappointed when I saw that neither Andre Carter nor Bo Richter made the final 53.
Yeah.
But as you went through it last segment, some of these spots, these are tough trying to explain it. We got the running back situation and all of that. Does that at all speak to the depth and the improvement of what we saw via free agency and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Brian Flores finding these guys? Because I still think we got deeper and better, PA, whether it's Van Ginkel in the mix and Grenard. Now, this is the pass rushing side, not the interior.
Yeah.
But Pat Jones has had one hell of a camp with his career potentially on the line. Jihad Ward, getting to know more about him. So, in one way, talking about the guys in the undrafted territory and making the most of that, I just love what they've done. I'm disappointed that Bo Richter didn't make it, but I know that he's got a place on the practice squad, maybe a future down the road. They got deeper and better with our pass rusher in the offseason.
Yeah, those in the know with the Minnesota Vikings, and this has to play itself out. But those in the know who do press conferences and stuff like that, I just sense that they're having to restrain themselves with how excited they are with what they have defensively for the Minnesota Vikings, specifically with these outside rushers Nordo's talking about. I mean, Dallas Turner, the first-round pick from Alabama, personally speaking, and I don't know as much as coaches and stuff like that. I ain't trying to go Vince Lombardi on this thing, but, the expectations for Turner when I started to watch him in training camp in these preseason games, he had a sack in that Raiders game right out of the gate, and to get the sack, he had to basically embarrass a veteran named Andrus Peat, who was a guard playing out of position. Okay, so that's not Dallas's fault that the Raiders were so stuck for offensive linemen. They had to put a guard at left tackle, and he was out of position. Cool, that's your lot in life. Well, then if you're Dallas Turner, the favorite in many betting areas to be the National Football League Defensive Rookie of the Year. If that's the situation in front of you, if you have that doughy, puffy Andrus Peat in front of you, then beat him. And that's what he did. And he kind of abused him the entire game. So that was really cool. But then as we moved on, there was just really nothing that jumped out about Turner. Why? Because he's 21 and he's learning to execute his toil. No matter how high-end these guys are, specifically at age 21, it doesn't just snap like that. But Turner is quality stock, and you're really going to love watching him as this thing progresses. Grenard's off 12.5 sacks. That's the pick your poison bit. The kid, the 21-year-old, needs some refining, but go ahead and single him every play and see what happens. Okay, now you're going to double him. What are you going to do with the former Texan with 12.5 sacks? Patrick Jones II, Nordo mentioned. Big season for him because he's been rather nondescript during his career, and he's abundantly gifted. Andrew Van Ginkel, for the analytical insiders, is one of the best outside linebackers in the NFL. Now they paid him a pretty penny to get him, but he's an on and off the ball kind of guy who can drop in coverage. He had a pick 6 last year against Washington where he was so studied up on the play, he knew what was coming, and Sam Howell threw it right to him, and he got in the end zone. Very smart guy, very athletic guy. So those in the know are very excited about certain facets of the Vikings defense with youthful exuberance and vigor and an abundance of talent. So, but we got to play the games and see this thing play out. But you hit on a good point.
Vikes Bites! Thank you, Thousand Hills. Another area, whether it was just 2 running backs, only 3 tight ends, PA, Johnny Munt, Josh Oliver, Nick Muse.
Right.
Kind of disappointing. Robert Tonyan just couldn't get healthy. N'Keal Harry trying to make that position change. Ends up not working out for either one of them.
Well, Robert Tonyan, the former Packer, all right, I mean, his stats they're not ballyhooed. But, I outside of calling some games, including Tonyan with the green and gold, and Tonyan most recently with the Chicago Bears, I didn't know a lot about him or anything.
Yeah.
Then I saw him in organized team activities. I couldn't believe how fast he was. Holy cow, he was super fast. And then we get to training camp, and he had a back problem, back spasms that wouldn't go away or whatever. And then they cut him. That was a mild surprise to me. Now, I'm not one to pick on the trainers or the coaches or anything about people's injuries. That's just not my lane. But I guess this was a situation where without T.J. Hawkinson, I just don't know if they felt they could trust him, from an injury standpoint, because he's fast and he could run the Hawkinson routes, not as well as TJ's, not that gifted, but that was a speed component that they cut. Johnny Munt is improving talent, the head coach believes. Josh Oliver is the type of tight end where when defenses start to look at the Minnesota Vikings offense, that's one of the first 2 or 3 guys that they're going to look at. Of course, they're going to start with Jefferson, then Aaron Jones. How are they using him? But what about this beef-eating tight end? I mean, because he's like an extra offensive lineman with speed. And the belief is with what they want to do with the running game this year and improve it, Oliver has a lot to do with that. So there's no real surprise there. Nick Muse he's versatile, but too bad for Robert Tonyan. I thought he would make the team. He didn't, and now we move on.
Vikes Bites! Lewis Cine does not make the final 53 yesterday. And
did he get signed by San Francisco?
Well, that's what I was trying to...
Well, their Vox, Greg Papa, texted me last night at like 8 o'clock saying, what do you know about Lewis Cine? So not sharing in-house intel. Of course, I wrote back, very nice man, and I wish him well. I do like Lewis Cine a lot. He's a very nice guy who... as the first-round pick, it didn't work out. And then, at Tottenham Hotspur in London, he's looking down at a bone popping out of his leg.
Yeah, it's not supposed to have been there.
Right. So, I mean, if there's PTSD involved with that, okay, I'm not going to be surprised. But, yeah, I wish him well. I think it's with San Francisco.
Well, everything I'm seeing, he's still a free agent. Is there a possibility the Niners are looking? Because that's ultimately what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
I've received several text messages basically asking, would you put him on the practice squad, or is it the vibe of fresh start somewhere else?
Good question.
Part of that plays into maybe how many guys that are out there that they also like.
Yeah.
We're talking about the running back situation and all of that.
Right.
And there's only so many spots on the practice squad. I'm just interested to know what's next for him.
I would think what's next for him would be joining the San Francisco 49ers, because I don't think their Vox, Greg Papa, who's super tied into Kyle Shanahan, sends me that text. If he doesn't have intel, that Cine probably would sign there. Maybe I'm oversharing here, and I wasn't supposed to share that because I thought he was on the Niners. Well, if that's the case, then don't text me, Vox. If so, practice squad here, I got no idea. I just, that game he had against Cleveland where, he's knocking backup quarterbacks all over the place. They're throwing balls to him. He's picking them off. And he played with his hair on fire. That's it. I mean, with all due respect, with Lewis Cine, that's it.
That's an
like
outlier, yeah.
That's all. I'm a horse racing guy. So, when I decide to make a win bet, it's predicated on past performances. With Lewis Cine, it's past performance. It's like one race, and it looked really, really good. But it may look good somewhere else.
So they got that Hufanga's kind of turned into a player, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He was a 5th rounder. They have Jair Brown.
Yeah, well, Hufanga was out either the entire season last year or the majority of it. And they just brought him back from the long-term injury bit. Yeah, so Hufanga's the bomb. I mean, he runs around like Polamalu. He's very, very athletic and active. I don't think he played in our game last year when Cousins chewed him up on Monday Night Football. But that plays into it, too, as to whether Lewis Cine's on their squad.
Yeah, there you go. Week 11, he tore up an ACL.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Yeah, welcome to the Bay Area, Lewis Cine. I guess you hear it here first, 9 to noon. Vikes Bites! Thank you, Thousand Hills. We have the final 53, but in some ways it doesn't feel like the complete story, PA.
Yeah.
You have Hawkinson on the PUP list, excuse me.
Well, we only have 2 running backs, which is weird.
Reisner's on the IR. He can return week 5. You mentioned they love Gabriel Murphy. He's on IR. He can return. And I'm just interested to know exactly who's then, because those spots somebody needs to leave for these guys to come back.
Right.
Have you played the game of, is Gabriel practice squad guy? Is it Reisner and Feeney? Is it Hawkinson and Muse?
Yeah.
And then in the end, you're right. Jaron Hall being on this roster, I'm just going off now, but
no, you're right.
Jaron Hall being in this mix.
Jaron Hall really costs like 9 people jobs.
Correct. It confuses the situation.
Right.
I think immensely.
Right. And I've been consistent with this, and it doesn't matter, where my information comes from or why I formulated this opinion. I didn't think Jaron Hall was going to be on the active roster. I'm not one to like bang my fist on this for Micah and be like, you're making a mistake. with somebody who, I don't think will play this year. I mean, if we're going to run the 3-quarterback trick because of injuries like last year with the 4 quarterbacks, when you get down to your 3rd quarterback, you're probably stuck and in a lot of trouble. And with McCarthy, the big horse is in the barn, and they're going to unleash him probably next year. So they decided to keep Jaron Hall. And my guess is that they knew if we try to slide him through waivers, somebody's absolutely going to pick him up and make him active. Okay, but credit to Jaron Hall, who in the preseason last year and in that terrible Packers performance at US Bank Stadium he started last year, my man has improved immensely. I mean, in his preseason work, he was in control. And, like I shared here or at Vikings.com yesterday with Gabe and Tatum, I can't remember where, but it's O'Connell opened his playbook a little bit for Jaron Hall this preseason. He gave him more of a menu than you generally will give quarterbacks in the preseason. And on the other side of it, it was a confluence of circumstance and a young man's improvement. Because when you play the Browns and when you play the Eagles, they're going to play man coverage. And they don't care if they win or if they lose. They want their backup corners to get confident and better in covering players man-to-man. Conversely, Kevin O'Connell has some cold-blooded to him. Well, if you're going to do that, then I'm putting Naylor, Ja'Shawn Jones, Tristan Jackson, and Lucky Jackson on routes with a quarterback who can get it to him, and we'll see if your man-to-man coverage is good. And generally speaking, the backup Vikings led by Jaron Hall killed man coverage all preseason. Absolutely obliterated it. And Hall had a lot to do with that. So his maturation is palpable. I mean, his development for a bunch of coaches, a group of coaches who pride themselves on developing quarterbacks, and they did a really good job with Jaron, so he made the team. Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com, joins 9 to noon next. You're listening to FM 100.3, KFAN, your Vikes Bites leader.
Father of mine, tell me where have you been? You know I just closed my eyes.
Here comes Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com, NBC's Football Night in America, and I'm also an author. Welcome back to Carousel Park at the State Fair. This is a 2-decade-plus guest, kind enough to join 9 to noon and share his elite football mind. So, great Minnesota get-together. Can we get a witness and a raucous round of applause for one of our favorites, Mr. Mike Florio, joining us now. What's going on there, Michael?
What are you eating up there? They got fried butter?
No,
You doing the fried butter?
Yeah, they got fried everything. Hopefully they got
Do you
some
just get
fried.
do you just get like a block of lard and put that in a deep fryer? I mean, that's what you should do. Get a big vat of congealed grease, roll it in flour, put it in the deep fryer. That's living, but not for long.
If it would profit one of these 8 million booths here, then they definitely would do it. But I got an A topic for you before we mix it up with some obvious things, football and stuff like that. The vertigo, is it completely gone?
I'm hovering somewhere now between 98 and 100%. For the most part, it's gone. There are certain moments where I feel it a little bit, but 3 weeks. And when it first happened, a friend of mine who had been through it said it took him about 3 weeks to feel normal again. And that's about where I am. I'm as normal as I'm ever going to be about 3 weeks after it happened. So thank you.
Yep, no problem. Now, Carousel Park, those in the Mesh-Besher Spence fan stands adjacent to the grandstand, listen closely. It's the most important thing you're going to hear all day. Mike is an author, and his newest book called Son of Mine is released next Tuesday. Son of Mine. It follows Father of Mine, and it has a mob bent to it. In fact, Kirkus Reviews calls it a fast-paced mob family saga with compelling characters, great dialogue, and hard-boiled vengeance. Now, with the book, which comes out September 3rd, which I believe is next Tuesday, ProFootballTalk.com to get more information on it. I don't want to step on your novel-related touchdown calls here, but the stolen dog named Noki. Does Noki adapt to his new family, and is that pooch based off your doggy, Macy?
Now, first of all, you need to be very careful about not spoiling anything in Father of Mine. You have to be sensitive to that. It makes me or it makes it hard, excuse me, that was an unfortunate misstatement. It makes it hard to properly sell Son of Mine without spoiling Father of Mine. So
I'm just talking about the dog.
I know, but, well, if somebody's in the process of reading the book and they hear that, you've kind of given away the ending. I'm trying to be respectful of anyone out there at any phase of the book, at any page they might be a Father of Mine.
Right.
So, but yes, there is a dog that makes its way into Son of Mine, and that dog is not anything like my dog.
Okay, well, best of luck to Noki.
Except in one way. Gnocchi, that's the more proper Italian pronunciation
Gnocchi
of the name, has a habit of licking out of the air smells that he likes, and that's something that was inspired by Macy, who will lick any smell out of the air that she likes, up to and including cigar smoke.
Right. There were several things uttered over the last 94 seconds that required this disclaimer.
This show is naughty and might make you a potty mouth.
Well, best of luck with the book next Tuesday. When we hook up on Wednesday, we will talk about it and promote it and stuff like that. By the way, something new, 9 to noon. If interested, next Tuesday, we're going to do every Tuesday at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, home to the Minnesota Vikings. Kevin O'Connell will join the radio show for a half hour from 11 to 11:30 Cornfields, and we'll see what we're able to draw out of that. That begins next Tuesday. The San Francisco 49ers are on the Viking schedule for it's the home opener, September 15th. And Mike, the Niners with Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk, I mean, unless I miss something, they're not budging. And the season is a week and change away. So tenuous for the Niners, no doubt, right?
Well, yeah, and here's the problem, and I just posted something about this as it relates to the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb, but it also applies to the 49ers and Trent Williams and the 49ers and Brandon Ayuk. If you're going to do a deal, and we knew that the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb were always going to do a deal, you need to set the deadline at a better time than a week before the start of the regular season. If you're going to do it anyway, get it done so that the player will be at training camp and ready to go. Now, CeeDee Lamb, who was antsy and anxious, he's going to be trying to make up for lost time. He may be trying to prove that he still has it. He may go a little harder than maybe he should, not in the shape he should be in, and boom, you got a pulled hamstring. Now, it's impossible to draw a bright line to that, but you can at least make a little dotted line. And the example that I gave in what I just posted, look at what the Vikings and Justin Jefferson did. Their deadline wasn't the start of training camp. It was the mandatory minicamp. Get the deal done before the mandatory minicamp. He's there for a couple of practices. He's getting acclimated, and then he's ready to go from the start of training camp. There's no holdout. The player doesn't have to deny himself his habit, his routine, the place he wants to be. We played some sound from CeeDee Lamb yesterday. He was tormented not being at training camp. So it's incumbent on both team and player, but more on the team, because at the end of the day, the team is the one that holds the purse strings. Make the deadline no later than the first day of training camp, if you're going to do the deal anyway. What do you gain? Now, the Cowboys, at some level, gained the fact that they had a storyline that allowed them to suck oxygen out of the room for all of training camp, and Jerry Jones, I think, prioritizes that kind of thing, but I think it's a mistake, because now you've got a guy who's behind the eight ball, who's trying to get himself ready, who's frustrated by the fact he wasn't there, and at some level he's going to be worried that he's not going to have the kind of season he had last year because he's not fully prepared. I just think it's a huge mistake. Kudos to the Vikings for getting it right. And shame on the Cowboys, the 49ers, and the Bengals with Jamar Chase in not setting the deadline first day of training camp.
I haven't seen anybody write about this, so maybe I missed something. Jahan Dotson, all right, who got traded from Washington to Philadelphia into our preseason game against the Eagles over the weekend. Now, Washington got a third-round pick out of that thing. I just kind of felt they were paving the way to maybe make a move for Brandon Ayuk. I'm talking about Washington. Put Ayuk with McLaurin for the LSU kid. I mean, have you heard anything about that? Is there any shot?
Well, there was some talk a week or so ago that the Commanders were back in play for a move to get Brandon Ayuk. For a while, it had been either the Steelers or Ayuk stays with the 49ers. And Ayuk could have gone to New England. He didn't want to go. Cleveland, he didn't want to go. it went from being really quiet to really loud for a couple of days to really quiet now for the past few weeks. And as we get closer and closer, and the clock is ticking loudly toward week 1, how in the world do you bring in a veteran receiver who has no experience in your offense, no experience with your coaches, no experience with your teammates, has to move into a new apartment or find a house, all the stuff you got to do. And here comes week 1. How do you get maximum return on the player if you wait until a week or two before the start of the regular season? I think at this point, the 49ers are just waiting for the right moment to move to their bottom line, that's their deadline. And last year with Nick Bosa, it was very late in camp when they got the deal done. It was close to this time of year. We're at that time of the year where deals get done, whether you're on the team or whether you're holding out or holding in. I think that it does make sense in theory, but if you're the Commanders, what are you really getting out of the guy this year? And it should make you less willing to give up what the 49ers are looking for in trade, what Ayuk is looking for in cash. If you're going to bring this guy in and, for the first half of the season, he's going to be getting himself up to speed.
PFT.
You mentioned Jerry Jones, and I read this at ProFootballTalk.com. PFT, we, ProFootballTalk.com. Mike Florio. Jerry Jones said he likes coaches and players to sweat final years of deals, specifically with Mike McCarthy. That was the direction. Are you on board with that? What do you feel about that?
No, because, look, this is just Jerry's way of covering up the fact that he's cheap. And for as much money as he has, he is completely cheap. He doesn't like to pay anyone to not work for him. So he wants to land the plane at the end of the contract, and then the guy walks away. He did that with Jason Garrett, and he's going to do that with Mike McCarthy. He should have fired McCarthy after that embarrassing loss to the Packers in the wild card round of the playoffs. I remember McCarthy saying at his press conference after the game, no one saw it coming. Hey, Mike, you're the guy whose job it is to see it coming. You're the guy who needs to look at the film and realize my old team is pretty damn good, and I better be ready or they're going to kick our asses all over AT&T Stadium field. So I thought that Jerry should have moved on, but he doesn't want to pay McCarthy to not be the coach. So now he's using this cockamamie idea, I'm making people work for the next contract. And what it does, and I remember the Vikings did this with Mike Tice, and it usually doesn't go this way, although we've seen more teams willing to do it in recent years. When the coach is in the last year of his contract, the players know it.
Yeah.
And if things start to go a little sideways, the players might be inclined to just stop listening to the coach because he's not going to be here next year. I'm not worried about this guy anymore. He's done. So that's the risk they take. And who knows, maybe at some point it means Mike McCarthy gets fired and Mike Zimmer bumps up to the interim head coaching position while the Cowboys figure out what they're going to do after the year. But I think it's a mistake. And I think the Cowboys, they got lucky last year. They kind of pulled an inside straight with the Eagles falling apart when they did. It allowed the Cowboys to win the division. But that just made it even worse when they blew that home game against the Packers. I just think they're going to have a hard time this year. And I don't know that Jerry really cares. At some point this offseason, it dawned on me, he just cares about his team being America's team. He doesn't care as much as he says about winning a Super Bowl. He cares about his team being more prominent than any others because that makes them more profitable than any others.
And when McCarthy gets fired,
Football feast.
and Zimmer takes over, he's now going to, as getting the band back together with Eric Kendricks, now include, and Linval Joseph, now includes Dalvin Cook. I just saw ProFootballTalk.com. The Dallas Cowboys have signed Dalvin Cook to join the skeletal remains of Ezekiel Elliott and a few others there. So Dalvin is with Big D. And, there were two stories yesterday in closing here, Mike, that I saw at ProFootballTalk.com that were just strange. And one of them involved the Minnesota Vikings, where they cut to 53 and they only keep two running backs, Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't or can't add somebody, but I just can't recall seeing that, just two running backs. And Kene Nwanwu was cut. What'd you think of all that?
Well, I was surprised. I mean, Myles Gaskin getting cut didn't really shock me, but then when Nwanwu was cut, especially with this new kickoff bit, maybe the Vikings are expecting that teams are just going to kick the ball out of the end zone, and I think a lot of teams are secretly planning to do that, just give up the 30 and take the risk of a long return off the table. But I thought the kick return skills would have given him a spot on the roster. And, yeah, to go down to 2 running backs, clearly they have to do something. And maybe they'll make waiver claims or they'll sign free agents. The problem is if you go after a veteran to be RB3 or RB4, that guy's got to play special teams. So my guess is they're going to be looking at running backs, young guys, undrafted rookies, guys who were cut by other teams that they can make a waiver claim on or go out and add in free agency, maybe put 1 on the roster, 1 or 2 on the practice squad, and have that position fully staffed, because it doesn't take much to have no healthy running backs. It's the most physically demanding and most injury-prone position in football. You're basically, I used to say it was, what did I used to say? I used to have a metaphor for it, and I can't remember what it is anymore. Bottom line is you can get injured easily. And Aaron Jones had like 6 games he missed last year. You need to have some depth there, and I fully expect by the time week 1 rolls around, they'll have that.
And lastly, have the Giants, Ravens, and Bucks finally revealed their cuts? I mean, I loved how
yeah,
you
they
wrote
did. It came out last night. But it was just weird because, look, there's no obligation to announce the cuts.
Right.
You just have to communicate them to the league. Some teams will announce them. And one GM said to me yesterday, it's ridiculous to announce it in the middle of the afternoon. Why do I want to give other teams more time to scrutinize my cuts and make plans about what they're going to do in response to them? 4 o'clock's the deadline to communicate it to the league. That's when you communicate it to the league, and you can announce them after the league knows what your moves are. But there was some issue with the waiver wire, the daily report that the league sends out, that slowed it down for like 4 or 5 hours before we saw the last 3. And the last 3 were the Giants, the Bucks, and the Ravens. But they're all out there now.
My man, I'll call you next week. Best of luck with the book, Son of Mine. Everybody Google it, search it, get ready to buy it next Tuesday, September 3rd. Mike Florio, our dear friend, super reliable and wonderful football mind. He's the author. It's called Son of Mine. Call you next week, all right?
All right, see you, buddy.
Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com. All right, we begin the middle hour around the corner with Star Tribune columnist and longtime Love Covenant dweller, Lavelle Neal III, at Lavelle Neal via Twitter. We're going to chat with him about the Twins and some other things briefly. Then we get into the great NFC North debate about 15, 20 minutes from now with Lions, Bears, Packers, and Vikings representation here at the State Fair. But we begin it with Lavelle, the columnist, and he's ballyhooed. That's around the corner at FM 100.3 KFAN here at the Great Minnesota Clump. Together, don't leave.